Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well today. I'd like to welcome you back to Alfred's Basic Adult Piano Course Greatest Hits, Level 1. This video is Lesson 10, and we're going to cover pages 18 and 19 in our book today, Beauty and the Beast. So welcome back. Once again, I'm glad you're here with me. Looking forward to working on another great piece in our book. This is Beauty and the Beast from Walt Disney's Beauty and the Beast. It's a really lovely song. It says at the top of page 18, use after page 75, or in parenthesis, page 119. So, as a reminder, if you're going through the Alfred's Basic Adult Piano Course lesson book, level 1, you're going to want to wait till after page 75 to start this piece. And like I've said many times in the past, that's like at the absolute minimum. I usually recommend waiting even beyond that, because a lot of those pieces, the pieces in this book I find to be much harder in many cases than where you were at in that book. So at the same time, it's almost like, everything you learn in this piece, you will have learned it by the time you get to page 75, but it's almost like you need more, maybe it's just more time, more experience on those things. Because as you know, working in this book, you're putting a lot more together. These are bigger pieces, they're a lot more involved. And then parenthesis 119 is if you're using the all-in-one course book. That's the lesson book, theory, technique, all-in-one. I'm currently not teaching that on my channel, but I know some of you might be using that as well. So you're going to want to wait till at least page 119. So the way I'm going to present this piece today is I'm actually going to start us off with both hands. A lot of times, as you know, I like to do the right hand first, the left hand second. Now in this book, we've encountered a few pieces where the melody does go back and forth between both hands. And this is one of those pieces. And when that happens, in this case, and with these pieces in this book, the hands are usually pretty close together. I can't remember exactly, but some of the lessons I may have split it up. But now we're about halfway through this book, so you should have enough experience where, at least in this case, in this lesson, putting the hands together shouldn't be that difficult. But I'll obviously break it down for us so that it's not that difficult. But I feel like in this piece, just breaking up the hands just really breaks up the flow of this piece. And a lot of that is because the melody is going from left hand into the right hand. So let's look at the hand position here in the beginning. And by the way, we are in 4/4 time. We're in the key of C major, so there's no sharps or flats in our key signature. 4/4 time, just basic 4 beats per measure. There's a lot of eighth notes. So when we do the rhythms and the counting, we're going to break it down to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now this is our position at the beginning of the piece. It's not quite the middle C position. So the middle C position we've done before, and the middle C position is where both thumbs are actually overlapping on middle C. It's not the most comfortable of positions for that very reason. Fortunately, this position, the thumbs are next to each other. So your right hand is in C position. Your left hand is actually what we could call the E position. We may have called that once or twice before. So what that is you're putting your left hand fifth finger down on the E below middle C. So then you've got 4 on F, 3 on G, 2 on A, and your thumb on B. And then you're continuing with your right hand on middle C, and then of course D, E, F, and G. So that should be very familiar in the right hand. So when you start, make sure that the thumbs are next to each other and you'll be in good shape. So we have a half rest here at the very beginning. So technically you're resting for 1 and 2 and then your first note comes in on beat 3, which is the E. Then you're going to go to G, and then you're going to go to B. Now, we haven't really studied a whole lot of chords. We've done chords in the Alfred lesson book, but this particular chord I don't think we've looked at yet. If you're familiar with chords, You might know that that's an E minor chord, E, G, and B. Now, if you're not familiar with an E minor chord, don't worry, but knowing this little setup here in the beginning can help us here, and you'll actually see it a few more times in your left hand. So an E minor chord, if you want, you could actually memorize that right here and now. An E minor chord is E, G, and B. But if you look at that, it's made of thirds, right? E to G is a third, you're skipping F. G to B is a third, you're skipping A. So when you start this piece, you're outlining an E minor chord with fingers 5, 3, and 1. And like I said, we're going to see that a few more times. In fact, several times throughout the piece. So being very familiar with this outline here in the left hand is going to be very handy. And like I said, the last note you play in the measure is C with your thumb. So if we even put those notes together with the rhythm, remember it comes in on beat 3, it's going to be 3 and 4 and. Going into the second measure, we've got F with our fourth finger. You've got a half rest in the right hand, so you're going to hold that for 1 and 2 and then you're going to come in on D in the right hand with your second finger, and you're going to go up a third to F. Now, while you do that, you're still holding the whole note in your left hand. So that whole measure is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, one of the tricky things about a piece like this is the first measure is eighth notes, and then the second measure is longer notes. You would think that would be easier. Well, the problem is it becomes so easy, people rush through it. So this is where the counting is very, very important. Let me demonstrate. I'm going to put both of these measures together. So we got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you see how much faster measure 1 is. And when I say faster, it's the same speed. It's just our rhythms are faster, right? And then it's like you hit the brakes. What happens is most people do this. You end up playing measure 2 like basically a quarter note and 2/8 notes. So how do you fix that? It's not just saying, well, I need to sit here longer because they're longer rhythms. It's the counting. This is where the counting is super, super important. And yeah, I'm talking specifically about measure 2, where you hold this out 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 and. And you're going to see that throughout the piece as well. So it's those measures where you have longer notes. Those are the ones you got to be careful of. Those are the ones where you really need to count out. And that's where you don't want to take any shortcuts. You don't even want to go 1, 2, 3, 4 because you might speed it up. You want to go 1 and 2 and. Fill out the entire beat so you're not rushing the beat. Going on to the third measure, we have in the right hand C and E with 1 and 3. There's a half rest now in the left hand. Now this is a half note in the right hand. So you're going to play that all by itself for 2 beats. And then on beat 3, you're going to be off in the right hand and you're only going to play in the left hand. And when you do that in the left hand, you're actually repeating the same 4 notes you had in measure 1. And they're on beats 3 and 4 and. So once again, there's that E minor chord we talked about. So measure 3 with the counting is going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then you're going to go to D in measure 4. There's a half rest in the left hand. This is something else you're going to see a lot of in this piece. A lot of half rests in right hand or the left hand. Be very, very, very careful. Don't hold through the half rest because these rests help with the style. It helps the piece from becoming too muddy. It makes the melody line a little bit cleaner. So we got that D on 1 and 2 and then on beat 3 coming on the F. Now here you don't have a rest in the right hand, it's a whole note. So you're still holding this D in the right hand. You got F on beat 3, A on beat 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then the last measure, E and G. And that's a half note, and you have a half rest in the right hand. So when you come in on beat 3, it's only the right hand because your left hand is resting at that point. And now this is basically going up the scale. When we say that, it's like C, D, E, F, because the C major scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So you're basically going up the first 4 notes. You're actually going to end it on G. So you're actually going all the way up to G in measure 6. So if you do that smoothly with the counting, it's 3 and 4 and 1, right, to beat 1. So when you get to measure 6, you're on that G. You come in the left hand on an open E chord. So we said E minor was E, G, and B, right? Take away the G, this is called an open chord. It's E and B. It's still the same outline, you're just not playing the G. In fact, the G's right here. So technically you're still on an E minor chord, it's just built differently. E, G, and B. But that still makes it an E minor chord. It's just your left hand. Think of your left hand playing an open E chord. So when you put all that together, that's going to sneak up on you because it's on a different line. So I'm coming from the end of the first line, 3 and 4, and you got to be ready for all of that to come together. So that's 2 beats at measure 6, 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 and you're just coming right back down. Now you're going to hit that G again. So just because you're on the G doesn't mean you're going to do, that'll get you in trouble, right? You hit the G again on beat 3, and you're still holding the E and B in the left hand because it's a whole note. So you got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now, if you know your F chord, look at this. F, A, C. You're actually playing an F major chord. Doesn't feel like it because it's split between the hands. There's a couple of ways of looking how you can get to measure 7. Your left hand in measure 6 was on E and B. 5 and 1. Look where my second and fourth finger are, or where they should be. It's on A, 2 is on A, and 4 is on F. And what's the 2 notes in measure 7? A and F. So if you stay real close to the keys and you use your fingers, your fingering, it'll get you right there. And then the right hand, it's just coming down to C, right? It's going right down the scale ending on C. So you're here in measure 6. And there you are on measure 7. And that is also held for 2 beats in the right hand before you do another series of 8th notes. This one starts on F. So it's F, E, D, C, and then it's just the left hand in measure 8 playing that G. So in measure 7, one more time, we got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and come in on a D and an F on 3 and 4 and. You're still holding the left hand because it's a whole note. That D and F is with 2 and 4. Now, with the 2 and the 4, you should be able to easily get C and E in the next measure. Because when I do D and F with 2 and 4, look where my thumb and third finger are. If your fingers are close to the keys and you haven't moved your hand position, and we haven't moved either hand since the beginning of the piece, keep that in mind, you should fall right into 1 and 3. So it's about finger strength, right? You gotta have strong fingers here. So stay tight, stay close. The tendency is to move the hands, right, to play strong, but try to keep it close. Keep it real close. Don't move out of this position. And if you do that, your fingering can help you actually hit the right notes. So here we are in the 4th measure on the 2nd line, C and E. So that's 1 and 2 and then that should be familiar. What's happening on that measure is it's like starting all over again, right? Here's that E, G, B, C, just like the beginning. And then the next measure is F, 1 and 2, and then D, F. So if you look at those 2 measures, that's measures 9 and 10. And you look at measures 1 and 2, it's the same thing. The only difference is you've got C and E at the beginning of measure 9. So measure 9 and measure 10 all together on the second line, these are the last two measures, would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So again, not rushing those last two, the last measure of that line. And yes, not rushing these last two quarter notes. As we continue to measure 11, it still should be very familiar. We'll go to the C and E, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. So there's our D, just like the fourth measure on the top line, but it's only 2 counts, and then this is different. So we got 1 and 2 and then both hands come in, G in the left hand, E in the right hand. You've got 4 eighth notes in the right hand, E, D, E, skip up to G. So a little turnaround and then a skip. E, D, E, G. And the counting would be 3 and 4 and. Now when you go to the next measure, third measure on the third line, you're going to end up with your second finger on A in the left hand, your thumb on middle C in the right hand. And those are both half notes. So 1 and 2 and then C in the right hand, you're resting in the left hand, and then B in the left hand, you're resting in the right hand. So that's a little tricky. You've got C, B. They're both eighth notes, and they have rests. Let's see, your right hand rests after, and your left hand is rest. So let me rephrase that. You've got A and C, 1 and 2 and. Then it's just the right hand, just the left hand, and then just the right hand on C and E. So there's a lot of rests there. You don't want to do this. You hear that? Especially with C and B, that's going to clash, and that's not going to sound good. So you got to separate it. And you don't want to do this either. That's not, you got to play smooth close to the keys. You hear the difference? So it's not muddled, but it's not choppy either. So those rests are really important and a little tricky, but very, very important. So on that third measure, we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, here's our first move of the piece. Our hands are still in the same position up to this point. Move left hand 2 down to F. Your second finger at this point is on that A. You just played the B with your thumb. So maybe during that rest in beat 4, your left hand's moving and it's right there. And when you move it down to that F, you're in the C position. So you're moving down to the C position is what you're doing. You're not just moving your second finger to F. You're moving your whole left hand down to the C position. And your right hand stays where it is. So now you've got 2 on F. 1 and 2 and then on beat 3, you got G in the left hand, E in the right hand. Then it goes to F in the right hand. And then on beat 4, you've got F in the left hand, D in the right hand, and then it goes to E. So that's a little busier there on beats 3 and 4. Once again, G and E, move to F, F and D, move to E. And you can hold the left hand because those are quarter notes. So that whole measure, that last measure on the third line, once you've moved your left hand down, with the counting is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then you're going to end up on measure 15, E in the left hand, C in the right hand. C is the whole note, so you're going to hold it the whole measure. 1 and 2 and then move to F, G, and down to C. And this is basically the end of like the first verse, if you will. This is a different part. So I say that because, you know, we've been putting the hands together already. We've been doing a lot of the rhythm already. So we're putting a lot together, which, you know, we haven't done in previous lessons, not like this. So before I go on, since we've put so much together, I want to do a review. I want to play that much from the beginning. I want to do it slow. I want to do it with the rhythm. Now, if you're not comfortable yet, you're still learning notes, of course, at this point or any point, pause it, practice that much, work on the notes, work on the fingering, work on making sure both hands hit at the same time, work on the rest. That's just as important. But once you feel good with those notes, and now you just want to get that steady rhythm, that's what I want to do at this point. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to go through measure 15. I'm going to take it nice and slow. This is a pretty slow piece. I'm going to take it a little bit slower. I'm going to do my best to count off. Well, I'm going to count off for sure, but count as much as I can. Occasionally I drop out on the counting because I just get such a dry throat from all this counting. I should have a glass of water. I've been doing this long enough and I still don't have a glass of water, but whatever. All right, so I'm going to start at the beginning. Make sure we got our hand position. E position in the left hand. You're outlining that E minor chord. Middle C with your thumb in the right hand. Now, since there's 2 beats of rest, that can actually be our count off, and we just come in on beat 3. So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so let's stop there. I almost lost it there at the end of the 3rd line going into that last measure. It snuck up on me where it says move the left hand. Even though I said, you've got that quarter rest, and I was going at a really slow tempo, I almost missed that jump. So don't let that sneak up on you. So you may need to practice measure 13. As soon as you hit the middle C here on beat 4, be moving down to that F. So you're right there, right? Rather than waiting to the last moment. Because even if you do, you got to jolt down there real quick. You're not going to have control. If you jolt, you're going to hit it probably too loud or slip off of it. But if you can move sooner, then you have more control when you land on it. So that was a really slow speed. And you could probably tell that going at that speed was both helpful and difficult. And the places that were difficult were probably measures like the 2nd line, 3rd measure, measure 8, because 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? You got these very long notes. So it's just like, it's hard because you feel like you should be moving and you feel like you're going so slow. But then when you get to the 8th notes at that tempo, it's like, okay, that's pretty comfortable. I need to go at this speed. So again, that is one of the challenges. The temptation, to speed up the long parts. And then that may hurt, the faster 8th notes. So again, that's why the counting and why counting the ands is so helpful. Obviously, the piece will go faster. But I wanted you to see that that's kind of where we're at right now. Making sure the 8th notes, you're not going too fast, but at the same time, you don't speed up the easy notes, the long notes. So we stopped at measure 15. We're going to pick it up on measure 16 now on the 4th line, 2nd measure. This is the last note you're going to play in this position in the left hand. So you got 5 on C that they've marked here. 1 and 2 and then it says move left hand 5 up to E. You're going back to the same place you were. So the first 2 notes you hit in measure 17 is basically outlining that E and B again, that E minor chord just without the G. So you're going back to where you started at the beginning of the piece. So you're down here 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 and. So during these eighth notes, you want to be moving that left hand up so you're right there and that you're in control and you're not banging that out. Now the right hand comes in on beat 3 on measure 16, and that's just right at the scale again. C, D, E, F, G. Now it doesn't come back down like it did at measure 6 on the second line. He's going to hang out on this G for a full measure. So I've got one back in measure 16. I've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. So you get to sit there for 2 full counts, and then beat 3 and 4. You've almost got the E minor chord. You've got E, G, and then you're going to insert this A on beat 4 and then the B. So you're just adding this A to it. 3 and 4 and. Got it? 3 and 4 and. Now, the A you're coming back to in the next measure, and an F. 4 on the F, 2 on the A. So from measure 17, you got 3 and 4 and. Right? So that's 2 counts. So this fourth measure here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Look where that went. We are now just slightly outside of our C position in the right hand. We went to an A. Now it's easy to go to. All you got to do is stretch. It's pretty logical, right? But just remember, that's an A, not a G. So you're going to have to stretch a little bit. And what I would do is just take the 4th finger on the G in the last measure. It's only an 8th note, so don't try to go 5, 5 or anything like that. Just 5, 4. It's nice and smooth that way. And you're going to reset your fingering back in measure 20 when we get there. So the last, when you're there, you're actually playing the same thing as measure 17. So measure 17 and 19, the third measure and the last measure of this 4th line are the same thing. So the last measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You've got that E minor with the added A in there, right? So let's take it back from measure 16. 16, we're down here with 5 on C, middle C with the right hand. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you're going to go to F and A at measure 20, just like you did on the 4th measure of that 3rd line. Now that 4th measure on the 3rd line, measure 18, be very careful with the right hand. There's more rests than we normally had. There's 3 beats of rest. Your right hand doesn't even come in until beat 4. So you got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then, of course, your left hand rests at that point. So it's really tricky right there. Now, jumping down to measure 20, we said F and A, 4 and 2. This is where you reset the right hand. So, you just played the A. Just bring your hand position back to the C position. And you got 2 beats of rest to do that in. So let's say you're right here at the beginning of measure 20. I can see how I reset my hand. So I'm here, 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 and. So this should be familiar, right? This is just like measure 16 going into measure 17, right above it. 3 and 4 and. There's our E and the G, E and the B again, and our G in the right hand. So it should be pretty familiar. We've had this a few times at this point. So that's 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 and. So that's just like measure 6. Once again, we have 3. You hit the G again on beat 3. 3 and 4 and. So the third measure there at the bottom line, 2 on the A, middle C, and that's 1 and 2, and you're going to hit C again in the right hand. C, D, E, C. Different combination of notes. We haven't had those before. C, D, E, C. So that measure is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. This is very different right here. Your second finger just played A. It's going to move over to B flat. You're still holding this half note. Now on beat 3, it's B natural with the thumb, and you're off in the right hand. And then lastly, G with the third finger. So that last measure is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Very different. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. One of the hardest things would be getting off that D right on beat 3, right here. So try to train yourself that when the thumb comes down, second finger in the right hand pops up. Got it? Now, you're basically going through this E minor chord backwards at this point. After the B flat, what do you have? B, G, and then look at the top of page 19, the first note in measure 24, E. And look at the 3 notes I just played. It's the E minor chord backwards. So B, G, E. Just don't hold them like I did, but I'm just showing you the outline. So that's another thing you can kind of, at that point, say. Instead of just saying, well, I'm just hitting these random notes, I'm doing this E minor chord backwards. So I've got 1, last measure, bottom of page 18. I got 1 and 2 and now E minor chord going backwards. Now when I hit the E at the top, I got to hit middle C with the thumb. So one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and guess what? This should sound very familiar. Whoops, I'm still supposed to hold that. That's because you're repeating the beginning, the very beginning of the piece. All of it. All of it. In the next 2 lines is a repeat. So check it out. Let's play it together, starting at measure 24. You're on E and C. We'll go slow. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's different right here. Here's what's different. The notes still are the same. So if you were with me, we're at measure 37, the last measure on the 3rd line. Now, comparing that, go back to page 18, the last measure of the 3rd line. It's the same thing, right? But notice there you were moving down to the C position, 2 on the F. Here, they deliberately have us going 4 on F. Why would they do that? Because something different's going to occur. You know, the only reason, actually, we moved back to the C position on page 18 was because of measure 16. because of that C. If it wasn't for that C, there was no reason to move that back down. That's the only reason, that one note. That was it. You're not moving back to C. If you look at measure 38 on page 19 and 39, you're just E, F, back to E, and then you're coming up to A. So you're not going down to that C. In fact, you won't do that again until the very end of the piece, and you will move down to the C position. All right, so let's compare. So at the top of page 19, measure 24, it's just like measure 1. The only difference is here you've got E and C. Measure 1, you had the half rest, right? But everything we played otherwise, measure 24 through measure 37. 37 is where we stopped, right? And we were talking about that at the end of the third line. You could say 30, we'll say 36. How about that? Because nothing changes. Nothing. In other words, measure 24, beat 3, through the end of measure 36 is the exact same material as page 18, measure 1, beat 3, through the end of measure 13, third line, third measure. Nothing is different. Rhythms, notes, fingering. Words are different, though. Words are different, but that's it. Now, when you get to measure 37 on page 19, third line, last measure, it's actually the same notes and rhythms. It's just the fingering's different. So instead of 2, you're going to stay right there. You got fourth finger on the F. So that's 1 and 2, and now your third finger's on G. Your right hand's still the same notes. E, F, and then on beat 4, you've got F in the left hand and D in the right hand. And then you go to E. So that's 3 and 4 and measure 38. E and the C, 1 and 2 and. Now measure 15 you did F and a G. Here you just sit on the F for 2 counts. So measure 38 is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and measure 39, E. And then on beat 3, the right hand takes over, E, D, E, G. And we've seen that before, right? That combination of notes. We had it back in the line above. So this is repeating measures 33, 30, 35. So this should all be familiar. So let's start right there. Beat 3 on measure 39. So you've got 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And notice that C in the right hand is tied now into through beat 2 in measure 43. So measure 39, 40, 41, 42, and 43, where we just stopped, is actually repeating, and the fingering, repeating the line above. Measure 35, 36, 37, and 38. So when you get to measure 41, so that's the fourth line, fourth measure. Notice the F, again, they marked it with a 4. So remember back on page 1, you moved down to the 2 on F. But here on page 19, both measure 37 and 41, you're going to stick with that 4 on F. So when you get down to measure 43, you're here on beats 1 and 2, and then right hand takes over. Notice it says slower. 3 and 4 and. This is still the same material. And 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now this is where we go down to 2 on F like page 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. There's a fermata right in this moment. You're going to hold that. And then, yeah, on the and of beat 4, you're going to do this E. You're still holding the F in the left hand. At this point, it's sort of out of time, but that's technically the and of beat 4. And then the last two measures, E in the left hand, C in the right hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then you end it on that low C. So page 19 is pretty much all repeats of the first page. And page 19 even repeats itself like 3 times. The ending is just, it keeps doing this pattern, right? But be careful on the bottom line, third measure, you go down to 2 on F. So you encounter this F, particular F, meaning in this particular pattern, 4 times in the piece. First time is measure 14 on page 18. Third line, last measure. Make note that when you move to the second finger. The next 2 times on page 19, the end of the third line and the second to last measure in the fourth line, you stay there with your fourth finger. And then measure 45 on the bottom line, that time you're going to move it to the 2 on the F. So keep track of that. That's very important to know. Otherwise, page 19, that's a repeat. It's very repetitive. Okay, so learn page 18. And then, once you feel comfortable with the notes, and, going through it at a fairly slow pace, I think then you can play along with what I just did. Now, I'm going to play through the whole piece. I'm not going to go through the whole piece at that same slow speed. There's enough information, like I said, that you can play along at that speed. And like I said, it's so repetitive. I will say, though, before I play through the whole piece, that there's no pedaling. So another reason to stay close to the keys, and I think that's why they wrote this the way they did, partially, so you don't have to pedal, and just keep it close to the keys, nice and smooth. It's a very smooth piece. Okay, it's marked mezzo forte. I kind of like this piece to be mezzo piano. It's a very nice piece. I personally like mezzo piano. If you want to do mezzo forte, that's great. Certainly, if you're learning notes, start it loud. You can bang it out and hit forte. Ultimately, though, think about where you want this piece to go musically. You might want it to be on the softer side. That's certainly where I like taking it. Now, here's the thing, though. There's no dynamics anywhere else. It's pretty bland. If you want to take this piece somewhere, because we just said it's repetitive. This is not anything that's on the page, but where you have running eighth notes that go up the scale. We talked about this at the end of, back at page 18, the last measure on the top line. Each note, you can put a crescendo, get louder. And then in measure 6, when you come down, get softer. See what I did? And then here. So that can make it more interesting, so you're not just playing the whole piece at the same volume. That's totally optional. But anywhere you see notes going up, ascending, put a crescendo. Where you see them descending, put a decrescendo. Look at measure 16 and 17 on page 18. Right? Left hand. And then both hands here in the next measure. Right? So every one of these, I'm getting louder, and then maybe softer, louder, down at the bottom, and then getting softer. Here in measure 22, maybe a little louder and then softer as I make this turnaround. All right? So it's interpretation, and you don't have to do it, but like I said, it can make it more interesting. The only thing that's actually marked other than that mezzo forte is measure 43, getting slower. So here you're just real delicate, really taking your time. Then we have the retard, and then into the fermata. When you have a fermata, really sit on it for a while. Most people don't. Most people are scared to hold fermatas. Now, you don't want to hold it as long as this, but like something like this. It really is powerful. When you put in that fermata, I mean, it speaks something to the audience. It says something to the audience. It's saying you care about this. It's meaningful. If you breeze through the fermata, it's almost like conveying that this isn't important to you, whether it's the music or the words or just being there. But when you put in a fermata, I feel like that really is saying, it's telling your audience, you love this moment. Please don't let this moment go away. And it's telling your audience, I appreciate you in this moment too. So think about that. If you've never thought about that with fermatas, that's a way to kind of like say, hey, let's hold on to this moment together. So it conveys a lot of different feelings in that moment. So don't breeze through your fermata. And then you're just gradually slowing down even more. Just fading away, dying out here at the very end. And that last measure, it's not marked fermata, but you could hold on to that longer too. Again, saying, I don't want this moment to end. So I'll play the whole thing through for you, up to speed. Again, moderately slow. It's going to be faster than when I did, but it's not terribly fast. So I'll give us the little count off and come in on beat 3. So 1 and 2 and. Yeah, so it's a very nice arrangement. Very, very lovely piece. When I was playing it, there was 2 more things I didn't share with you that are optional, but will take this to the next level. Now, when I played it, one thing that kept it very smooth. So, I was talking so much earlier about the counting. You got to count. So that the longer notes aren't rushed, right? Well, when I was playing it for you, I was still counting. But here's the thing. I wasn't breaking it up into the ands. So when you're playing a piece for the first time and you're putting it all together, the ands are so important. But what happens is when you perform a piece and you still are performing it, 1 and 2 and, when you put in all those ands, you're also breaking up the rhythm. Like you're making it a little more choppy. It's not as fluid, right? So, for example, 1 and 2 and versus 1, 2. Did you hear what I did there? 1 and 2 and, or 1, 2. Which one of those is going to produce smoother results? The one where I'm counting 1 and 2 and, or the one where I'm counting 1, 2? The one where I'm counting 1, 2. I'm not breaking it up. But here's the thing. Listen to my eighth notes. Listen to the speed of my eighth notes. 1 and 2 and. 1, 2. Nothing changed. So I'm not changing the tempo. I'm simply not counting or stressing the ands. They're there. My eighth note's there. I didn't change tempos. But what I'm doing is I'm saying less, so therefore I'm not chopping it up as much, right? I'm not stressing those ands. That's a good goal. You don't have to. You got to make sure everything is precise first. But once you've counted this piece all the way through 1 and 2 and, start going 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me demonstrate. I'll play you the first line. So I'll do it first, the first line with the ands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, let's say at this point you're extremely comfortable with that. You've played it so many times, your rhythm's not going to falter. Take it at the same speed, count it, but don't say the ands. Now, that's easier said than done because you're so used to putting like eighth notes with certain ands. And the other thing is, if I take away the ands and the measures where I'm holding long notes, that's where I could rush it. But hopefully you've played it so much now that you can't falter. So I stress, don't do this too soon. Do it where you feel so comfortable. You're like, okay, I can play this piece. Nothing's going to change, except it's going to get smoother. So here's what it sounds like without the ands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't change the speed, right? I'm saving my voice. Not that you have to count out loud, but in this case, I'm saving my voice. But it's just already I can feel it's much smoother, much more fluid. And at that point, just easier. So again, I have to stress, you can't start a piece that way. You've got to make sure everything lines up, all the half beats, all the ands, everything. But once you get to that point and you feel super comfortable, eliminate the ands, right? Make sure your main beat is still exactly where it's supposed to be, and those notes that are attached to the main beat still come in. But you're going to find the piece being a lot smoother. And of course, easier to speed up the tempo too. Let's say this was a fast song. It's not, thank goodness, but what if it was fast and I went 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Trying to count that is ridiculous, but even at that fast speed, if I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, even that's so much easier and it's already going to get smoother. So there's a lot of reasons why eventually it is nice to eliminate the ands. The other thing I was going to mention, I think I forgot it now. Darn it. There was one other thing. Shoot. Man, that stinks. I forgot. I think, well, maybe that was it. Maybe it was just, it was the counting and the smoothness. I don't know. I thought there was one other thing. Apparently it's not important. Oh, well. I could have sworn there was one other thing. Oh, that's driving me nuts. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe that was it. And I don't know. Okay, but if you get to that point, then you're in really good shape. You're in really good shape with this piece. So I'll leave it at that. It's a moderately slow piece, so it's not fast either way. If you learn this piece with the ands and you want to call it quits at that point, that's fine. That's fine. Because I'd rather you do this with the ands well and it be a little choppy than you try to make it too smooth too soon and it ends up being choppy anyways because you're struggling to keep it fluid. You're struggling to keep up and you're struggling to keep the even rhythms. You see what I'm saying there? So that's one of the big challenges with this piece is going to be the counting, the fluidity. Note wise, yeah, it's got its challenges, but when we break it down like we did throughout the video, you can see a lot of it's repetitious. And if your fingers are real close in these positions, you're going to do a really good job of hitting all the right notes. So that's basically it. And like I said, there's no pedaling, so you don't have to worry about that. So it's a very, very nice piece. I hope you enjoy it. Spend some time on it. And if you learn it just to learn it, move on. That's perfectly fine too. But yeah, very nice arrangement for a level one book. Very, very good piece. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. As always, please leave any questions, comments you have in down below, and I will do my best to answer them all in as soon as possible. And I definitely look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.